and trying to play the game of, should I do this? Should I do that? Will this look better? Will that look better? Like, ultimately, the question comes down to what works for you. Ask Dr. Gray Pre-Med Q&A, brought to you by Blueprint MCAT. How you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I am excellent. What can I help you with?
So I'm kind of just starting out in my post-bac pre-med journey, I guess for about a year now. So I'm like a third of the way into it.
Okay.
I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for about 2 years, or I guess just over 2 years now. And like throughout, I guess like when I started nursing school, I just kind of was like, being a doctor would be fun. And like kind of directing the care of patients is something that like I've been more drawn to and more attracted to.
Okay.
So I was always like, no, I don't think I could do it. I'm probably not smart enough. My GPA is not good enough. Kind of like put myself down. And then I was like, you know what? Why not me?
Why
so I
not?
kind of made that like,
Love
exactly.
it.
So I kind of made that, that step, I guess sometime last summer, and I started taking Gen Chem 1 and Gen Chem 2. I took those first semester, fall last year, or in spring.
Okay.
And then now I'm taking pre-calc to take physics. So still kind of early on.
Okay.
But just some general questions, just kind of like, because my GPA wasn't that great. Like I had like, I think this says like a 3.4-ish. So it's not like the best.
It's not terrible. Do you know the trends involved there?
There's not really a trend. It's kind of like, because I was not a nursing major to start out, and I kind of fell into it because I took this other class and I was like, oh, doing CPR is cool. So I was like, let me look into other things.
Staying alive.
Yeah, exactly. So I just, fell into that, and I was like trying to look for other things. I was like, maybe PA school. And then I didn't think my GPA would be good enough for PA school. So I went to nursing just thinking I was going to do nursing. And then I eventually found out I was like, no, I want to be a doctor. So,
got it.
So the trend is like kind of like, here, and then it goes up when I'm taking my prereqs, and the nursing school kind of like just goes back down. So it's not really a trend. So I'm hoping, because I'm going to do a post-bac. I'm not going to do like a master's or anything. Okay. And the post-bac is just going to consist mostly of the prereqs and maybe some upper level science courses. Okay. Will that count as like the last 30 to 60 trend? Will that count as an upward trend?
Definitely.
Okay.
Assuming you get good grades.
Yeah. Assuming that I get good grades.
Yeah.
So then that kind of goes into my second question of like proving that it's rigorous enough. So I still work full time. I have to work full time just to support myself.
Yep.
So I'm only able to take about 8 hours per semester.
Okay.
Do you think that's enough? Because I'm scheduled to take OChem and then Bio 1 in the fall, and then second courses in the spring.
Yeah.
Do you think?
What's the alternative?
I mean, I guess quit working, but I can't do that.
So basically, you're saying there is no alternative.
Yeah. So I guess that's it. Okay.
There's your answer.
All right.
So if they come to you and say, "Why did you only take 8 semester credit hours at a time?" And you're like, "I was working full time as a nurse.
Gotcha.
Didn't have the bandwidth."
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, I guess that's good news.
So ultimately, let me expand on that, right? Because ultimately, the question will come down to, will there be some schools that don't like that? Maybe. You can't control that, right? So my biggest mission in this life is to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do for you, first and foremost. And trying to play the game of, should I do this? Should I do that? Will this look better? Will that look better? Like, ultimately, the question comes down to what works for you.
Gotcha.
Now, theoretically, do you live alone? Do you have a roommate?
No, I have a roommate. Yeah.
So you have a roommate. Theoretically, you could get 2 more roommates, and the cost of your rent goes down. Theoretically, you could move out, break your lease, and go move back in with parents if that's an option, right? There are very extreme ways of saying, oh, now I can go take a full course load. Gotcha. But that's not super logical. You're working as a nurse. It's amazing clinical experience, obviously. You're doing good work, taking care of patients. So keep doing that. And you may have to explain why you only took 8 credit hours. And there may be a school or 2 or however many that aren't going to like that if they're looking at your schedule going only 8 credit hours and they don't bother to look at your activities to see what you're doing. That may happen, but you can't control that. So don't worry about it.
Okay. That's good news to hear. So that kind of leads into my other question. So I'm taking because in order to take physics, you have to take pre-calc.
Yep.
I'm taking the non-calculus based physics. This pre-calc class that I'm in is like, there's no lecture. You have to teach yourself. It's 5 credit hours and it's 10 weeks over the summer. And it's kicking my butt for sure.
Yeah.
So I have a C in it. I think I'm like right on the CB edge right there. Tomorrow's the last day to withdraw if I were to withdraw. And I don't know necessarily what would be better. Like if I ended up with a C in the class, is that really going to hurt my, okay. Because I know it's not like a technical prereq, but it's also like
it's not
post-bac work. Like
but it's like a 5 credit grade. So you don't want 5 credits of a C on your post-bac work when your goal is as close to perfect as possible.
Okay.
So if you can withdraw, no harm, no foul, I would withdraw. It may screw up your timeline because it's not going to let you take physics when you're planning on it. So you have to work that into the equation. Maybe, I mean, ultimately the question is, why are you struggling with it?
Yeah.
And if you can potentially find another physics class that doesn't have a pre-calc or calc prerequisite, can you go take that? But then are you shooting yourself in the foot because you don't have that math foundation that's going to help you do well in physics? So you just have to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought, because I tried to do this same class like in the fall of last semester, and I was like, there's no way, because like I hadn't taken a math class in like 4 or 5 years. So like trying to reach myself some algebra while learning pre-calc in a condensed time is just like not and I was doing terribly in the first little bit, and I kind of like got some study habits down, but by that time it's like pretty much too late because you're halfway through the course.
Yeah.
So I guess like I'll probably just have to withdraw, and then because I now that I have the study habits down, I know I could do it again and at least get a B, if not an A, the next time. So I think that I'll probably I lose $1,000 for paying for the class, but $1,000.
They don't give it back to you if you withdraw.
I was gonna withdraw earlier when I realized how bad I was doing, and then it was like I was only gonna get like $250 of it back. So then I was like, well, I guess I got to keep going, and then I was like, no, I'm just kind of in this. No, I'm going to lose it all, and I get a W instead of.
That's painful.
Yeah, it's rough, but we'll see, I guess. So
no, we won't. We won't see.
We get it? We won't see. There you go. All right. Well, that's some good information too. Some other questions I have written down here. So my first 2 classes, my Gen Chems class and then this one, those 2 were online because I was a travel nurse for the first like the last half of the second semester, or the first semester, and then all of the second semester. So I wasn't able to be in class. I'd like to continue travel nursing. Mm-hmm. However, like, how bad would it look if my classes were online with labs? Like, is that just not the best look, or?
Exactly. That, right? It's not the best look. There are, and I mentioned this in another Ask Dr. Gray recently, Hopkins is the first major institution that I know of that basically changed their whole process to basically say online classes are perfectly fine.
Okay.
No matter when, right? Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during pandemic, we now accept online classes and don't think, hopefully, any less of them. Okay. Right? And to me, it's like if a medical school is going to say, oh, we won't accept online classes only during the pandemic, we don't like them, I would go to them and go, well, are you not allowing your medical students to graduate because they did medical school online during that time? And he'll go, no, it's fine. Well, then why? Like, why?
Yeah.
Right, it's a little hypocritical.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense. Would it change? So like, because I live in Nashville, there are like 3 or 4 private schools in Nashville, and like the closest public school is like an hour and a half away, besides community colleges. So I've taken my classes at community colleges. Okay. If they're online at a community college, does that look even worse than as bad? Or?
Maybe, right? Okay. Maybe. Again, you can't control how medical schools are going to look at things. The only thing that you can do is do what's going to work best for you, knowing that, online may hurt you for some schools. Community college may hurt you at some schools. Online at community college may hurt you at some schools. So again, you can only do what you can do, and hope that works out.
Gotcha. And I figured like do well in those classes, do well in the MCAT, that will kind of negate any sort of doubts about, okay, cool.
Exactly. And your GPA from when you went through nursing school isn't horrible, right? You said 3.4-ish, right? So it's not like you're trying to make up for a 2.7 GPA. So I think you'll be okay.
And I don't know if this is this might be a more like school dependent, like depends on each school. But like for nursing, we had to take like anatomy and physiology, an intro to chem class, a microbiology class, and then what was the other one? A patho class. But I know the A and P, they're not counting as prereqs because they're nursing and allied health, like specific ones. So those won't count as like a prereq. But will they count as like towards my BCPM GPA? Like, yes. Since they're not, okay, cool. So that's good because I have A's in those classes.
Yeah. So science GPA, that all works out the same, whether it's typically, right now go to AMCAS and look at what they consider science GPA. There's some weirdness, but even if it's kind of labeled as maybe an allied health, which may not typically be considered science, if it's anatomy and physiology, it should be considered science. So it's always confusing for students, the whole kind of course classification guide that the schools put out, or not schools, the application services put out, because it looks like it's pretty firm. Like if it's this, then it's this. If it's that, then it's that. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide how to categorize it. And then it's up to AMCAS, ACOMAS, and TMDSAS to adjudicate it, to actually confirm or deny. And so the example I always give is just because something's labeled as a bio course, right? Bio 350, whatever that is, right? Doesn't mean it's a bio course. Doesn't mean it's biology that counts as science. Because there are random bio 350 courses that are writing for biologists. That's an English course, right? So you just have to use your best judgment and go, this is anatomy and physiology. I don't care that it's under this other course classification. It's anatomy and physiology. That is science. I'm going to mark that as a science course.
Cool. Because all those I got A's in pretty much everyone except patho I got a B in. So I was really hoping that would kind of boost my science GPA, because the 2 science courses I took like way back in my sophomore year was 2 C's. So
yeah, and to your point, right, you had said, they don't really count as prereq. So that's the big misconception that a lot of people have, especially coming from the nursing field, is usually a lot of times the chemistry, bio, physics, whatever, those are all chemistry for nurses, chemistry for whatever, and those will not count as prereqs that schools want.
Cool. And that's why I wasn't, like, if it was not going to count as a prereq, would it still, help me as far as like science GPA or whatever?
Definitely.
So my other questions, since I'll be taking 8 hours needing to study for those classes and I'm working full time, it's going to be kind of tough to fit in volunteer shadow hours on like my one day off. So do you think at least shadow hours, I'm in the hospital 36 to 48 hours a week? Have you heard of anybody trying to use like that in place of having as much? Because of course there's going to be times where over breaks and stuff where I can't get shadow hours, but I may not have enough. As maybe the average applicant does or whatever. So will my clinical experience be able to compensate for that fact?
I never like to think of things as compensating for or making up for. So being a nurse, obviously amazing clinical experience, and that will be looked upon highly favorably. And I think you should get shadowing when you can. Now, do you need 100 hours of shadowing? No. Do you need 50? Probably not. But can you sneak in for a half a day every few months and go shadow someone? Sure, you can do that. And I always talk about it because a lot of nurses will push back on me. Like, what do you mean I have to shadow? Like, I'm working with the doctors all the time. I'm like, yes, you're working in one specific facet of their job. You're doing all of your job. The goal of shadowing is to go see what all of their job looks like, because you only see one small part of it. So go with them when they're not at the bedside with nurses, or not at the nurses station talking with nurses, or not doing patient rounds with the whole team. Like, go see what else they're doing and make sure that you're okay with all of that too.